We'll go ahead and get started. Our final candidate this morning is Dr. Ron Ingle. Dr. Ingle spent about 14 years as the president of Coastal Carolina University, and then his most previous work was at Young Harris College, where he was the executive vice president provost there, in transition from making them from a 2-year college to a 4-year institution. So again, we'll follow the same format. Dr. Ingle will speak, and then we'll take questions. And again, I encourage you just, if you would, identify yourself and the department you're with. Thank you.
Thank you. I know we're videotaping this, or if that's still the current term, that's not out of date. But I prefer to walk around, but if I'm trapped by this microphone, we'll do that. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I don't have a formal presentation or PowerPoint or whatever else the case may be. I'm a native South Carolinian. Grew up in a small town in South Carolina. I'm a graduate of Wofford College. I'm very committed to liberal arts education, and I'll tell you my experiences as well. Well, I went to Wofford, and I majored in English, minored in history. I bought into that liberal arts message that the faculty and the president, the rest of them were giving, but then I found in my senior year that the business administration majors were getting the jobs and the English majors were working at McDonald's. So but I still buy into it. And after Wofford, did graduate study at Florida State, and then worked for a year or so at when Kennesaw, which is now Kennesaw State University, was just cranking up. And we had a perfect institution my first year. We were planning the institution. So we had very limited administration, no students, and no faculty. So, we ran a tight ship. But then I was served in the U.S. Army at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And that's when I met my wife, Judy, who's a native of Florence, Alabama, just not too far from here. And we were married when I was at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And she was a student in Nashville at what was then Peabody. I think it's pretty much all together now, Vanderbilt. And so we had a family, 2 boys. Our 2 boys are, well, Judy, her career was in education. She was a high school English teacher, taught AP, but she liked to work with the students who were at the other end of the scale. She felt that she could see results, and she had results. She said, the best thing I can do with those AP students is kind of get out of their way, but working with the other students, I can see some things happening. So most of her career, she was devoted to. One time she was, telling me more about Judy than what you really want to hear. But, one time she was the principal of an alternative school, and that was an experience. These were kids who were not necessarily in deep trouble, but they were on the way. And so that was, if you get to meet her, she can tell you more about that. After Army and Kennesaw, I knew that I always, even back in Wofford days, I knew I wanted to be in and around a college campus. My friends were going to law school and med school and all that. Maybe I didn't want to grow up. I don't know what it was, but I just liked the academic life. I liked the way it felt. I liked the idea of people felt free to talk about things that in growing up in small town South Carolina, I never knew that people talked about these ideas and concepts, philosophies, and all that. So I knew I was going to work at college, just didn't know how to define it. Well, then I decided.
Could you take that?
Sure.
The one that's right there.
Yeah.
I'm getting old, I can hear like.
That's I can identify with that. Then I decided that I did not want to do graduate work in English because I would have been not a very good English professor. So I called my psychology professor at Wofford. Now, this is after I've been out of school a while. And I said, we're going to put this liberal arts stuff to a test. I said, I want to go to graduate school. I want to do it in psychology. And he said, well, you can do it. I said, well, you know, I didn't major in psychology. He said, I'm going to send you the most difficult introductory psychology book that I have on my shelf. He said, you study this thing, this is true. You study this for a month or so, and then take the GRE. Well, I did it. Liberal arts stuff worked, because then I went to receive a PhD in psychology from Ohio State, the Ohio State University. And that was quite an experience, you know, married with 2 kids, and graduate school is not easy, as many of you know that. But after that, I was at the University of South Carolina, on the faculty of the University of South Carolina, and then was asked to go to what was then a branch campus at the University of South Carolina. University of South Carolina, Coastal Carolina College of the University of South Carolina. And they had done a search for a vice chancellor for academic affairs that had not been successful. And I went down for an interview, and I came back home, and my wife said, oh my God. And she knew. She said, we're moving to the coastal South Carolina. I said, yep. And my friends at the university said, you are giving up a tenured professorship to do what? You know, go to the dark side? But I enjoyed it. I went there and was vice chancellor for academic affairs. And then Coastal Carolina has a somewhat of a similar history, very embedded in the community, created by community people as a community county-sponsored, supported junior college back in the 50s. Then was affiliated with the College of Charleston just for accreditation purposes. But then was part of the University of South Carolina. But the local people, and we all knew that we could not reach our potential having to answer to the main campus in Columbia. Now, if you were the chief academic officer of a place that has a very, like I was, very vibrant marine sciences program, and every time you asked for support for your marine sciences program, they said, but we have a great marine sciences program in Columbia. I said, I have the Atlantic Ocean. you have Lake Moultrie. You know, so, anyway, a lot of things, and we had to pay monetary tribute to be a member of the university. But finally, and here again, this is boring to you, so I'm not going to go through the details. But anyway, in true South Carolina fashion, we seceded from the University of South Carolina. And we broke away from that, and I know what transitions are, and I know what change is, and I know you're going through a lot of changes, and change is not easy, but change is inevitable, and change is very positive if you get buy-in. If you get resistance, it could be, and you know, it can be hurtful, decisive, and unsuccessful. This is not like you have here, but you know, the faculty intellectually knew that at the end of December in '92 that they were going to get their paycheck. But as of January, we were going to be in, is my check going to be the same? Is it going to say the University of South Carolina? Is it going to say this entity that doesn't even have a name yet? And so, yeah, it was a tough time. But we got through this. Change also can be very exciting, exhilarating. So we went through that, stayed there for 14 years, well, stayed there for 12, and the board, I said, folks, it's time for me to retire. don't you think you better think about a search? And they said, oh, we'll get around to it. Well, anyway, I said, no, we're going to be more specific than that. So I agreed to stay 2 more years, and as we went through I was the first president, and we went through a search, and there was another president there. And those were wonderful times, but then I was retired for a couple of years and did not, I've done well in most jobs I have, but I do not do well in non-jobs. And so I got bored. My wife got bored with me. One can only play so much golf. But we were and still continue to be very involved in community. I'm on the board of a free medical clinic. My wife is on the hospital board. We're both involved in an early learning mentoring group that has been tremendously successful. And I'm on the board of a music festival that we've had in Pawleys Island for 25 years. But none of those things pay, but they're a lot of fun. But then I got a call from Young Harris College that had a new, dynamic, great president. But Kathy Cox had never been a college administrator. And they were going from being a 2-year private liberal arts institution, 125 years old, but only been offering associate degrees for 90 years. And they were going to transition to be a 4-year institution. Well, Kirby Godsey, who's a good friend of mine, who's the president of Mercer, Kathy had been on Kirby's board, and he said, you need to talk to Ron Ingle. He's bored and he wants something to do. So I went up and we just defined my job as we went to help them transition. I think my title was Executive Vice President and Provost. And but as Kathy said, everything's going to report to you. We meet every Monday morning. You tell me what I need to know, and then we'll move on from there. And she was great. I told her, I'll do it. It's a deal. I don't want to raise money. I've done that. I don't want to go to any cocktail parties I don't want to go to. She said, that's okay. So we hired faculty, like, I don't know, tripled the number of faculty. And you're talking about a good time. You're bringing in these bright, young faculty members from some of the finest institutions in the country and trying to blend that group of great people with a group of other great people who devoted their entire professional lives to this little 2-year schools up in the mountains of North Georgia. So that was an interesting time, but we got through that, very successful. And then I've been doing some consulting, and then started talking to the registry, learned about Athens State University and that some of the issues here, some other opportunities I'd had to work as an interim for a year or so, just didn't seem to be a good fit for me. You know, can you imagine a kid from a small town, South Carolina, being the interim president of a school in upstate New York with a powerful union? I mean, that wasn't going to work. I mean, it didn't take them 2 years to even understand what I was saying. I probably never understand what they were saying. But when I saw this opportunity and knowing Athens State, knowing its history, I knew more about its history than its current mission. I know more about its current mission now, obviously. Knowing this area of Alabama, which we've identified with, we've been married, my wife and I, for almost 50 years. So, I mean, this is Judy's home for years. So, you know, it felt comfortable, and then I felt it was, you know, worth my coming here, talking to you, trying to understand some of the issues, and helping you, and helping the president, and helping the institution work through some of these. And, you know, always you get the question, I'm not, when I make some of these comments, you say, well, he's too flippant. No, I'm not, because I'm serious about these. But I remember one time we did a search for a dean when I was provost, and you always ask somebody, what is your management style? Well, you know, reading the word on how to interview for a academic job. My management style is collaborative. You know, that's the right answer. But this guy, I said, one of the search committee members said, "What is your management style?" He said, "Well, I feel like my management style is compassionate but dictatorial." I said, "You're hired right now." But no, and feel free to call faculty at Coastal Carolina University. Not everybody loves me. Not everybody likes me, but most understand. I like to be out and about on campus. I like to know about you, but I don't want to know about you by having you make an appointment to come to my office. That's a waste of your time, and I would prefer just to walk around campus and get to meet you, to sit and talk to you in your space. Now, sometimes it's necessary for faculty and faculty leadership to come to my office, obviously. But I can make decisions. But truly, things like others I've talked to on your campus, things like curriculum issues, for example. Not only if we're looking at some curriculum matters in your discipline, my discipline is psychology. I don't know what your discipline is. The details of it, I know what it is. But faculty, the curriculum matters need to come from faculty. Now, as a provost, an interim provost even, I like ideas. That's why we're here. That's why we're here. And people get upset, we get upset with each other, and that's going to happen. But you know, in the academy, that's what we do. We argue, we debate, but hopefully most of the time, we reach some consensus that are in the best interest of the students and the institution. And from time to time, and I could ramble on from time to time, and when working with faculty, or they came to me with a new curriculum. But too often, it really was the way, and far be it from me to tell them what needs to be taught, but I would look at a curriculum, and I remember in one discipline, and it was what the faculty wanted to teach, not what we wanted the students to learn. And so we had to work through that to get a better idea of what a major in this particular field would look like, and what is it going to mean to a student, and what are they prepared to do when they go out into the world. So I'm a strong advocate, and this is a word that's tossed around a lot of times, and I'm not that, I just got the materials a couple of days ago. So I hadn't had a lot of time to look at all the information, and yours is a unique institution. And some of the models that would work at an institution, undergraduate or with graduate programs, do not apply here, but the principles are the same. The principles are the same. Faculty governance is important to us. It is very important to us. We're not going to always agree on stuff. It would be such a boring existence if we did. But it ought to be an environment that we feel comfortable enough, and sometimes our voices will get a little loud, that we can work through these things. And so that's the type of just a broad study, because I could give you examples, but those examples may not apply here, and they'll probably be boring to you. They're interesting to me. Anytime you talk about yourself, it's interesting, but not necessarily to other people. But I prefer to, let's have some questions now, and let me see if I can address those. Yes, sir.
Would you be an advocate for us trying to grow upwards into a graduate program? Because we're constrained.
Yeah.
We can't move down, we can't move
Yeah,
up.
well, you can't move down necessarily.
Well,
Well, you could.
Not perhaps start teaching some of those.
Well,
But then Calhoun would
yeah.
something.
But you know, to be a little, and I'm going to ask you a question directly, but you know, Florida as a state, I can recall that back, when was it? Back in the 60s and 70s, they had this grand experiment when they created a bunch of upper-level universities that were going to be fed by the community college system. And most of them now, if you look at them, they're four-year institutions, if not all of them. So sometimes the model works, sometimes it doesn't. So I think the constraints there, probably political. And faculty, you know, there's sometimes we need, as faculty, to let go in terms of to carry things that we advocate for, but sometimes they move into realms that we're not very good at, political stuff. And sometimes we need to input that and influence it, but we probably, and I'm including myself, don't need to be out front. Now, yes, I have thought about some, but I think we need to look at, I'm offering opinions now with being on your campus less than a day. I think there's some opportunities in some very specialized ways for graduate programs that could meet the needs of our region, fit the mission of this institution. And I think if we go too far adrift, particularly at the master's level, here again, I'm a strong advocate, as I said, of liberal arts education. I'm not a strong advocate of a generic vanilla, let me use my discipline, psychology master's degree, unless you can be very specific in school psychology or substance rehabilitation or something like that. It has to be very, very specific that can meet the needs of the community. There are other areas, I'm sure, and I think there are opportunities there. We do have to look at the real world and take a look at our neighbors. You mentioned one that okay, which battles are we going to win? I didn't say fight, I said win. So we look at a program that we can really make a very, very strong case that we can do this better than anybody else. Other thing is too, now we are really great at making plans. We got to pay for it. So we have to look at, okay, if we add a new program, what about the resources, the faculty resources that are needed? Do we have faculty, or are we going to have to hire new faculty? If we take faculty now teaching undergraduate students and redirect them into more graduate work, what does that mean? So we just need to go a little bit beyond what's the course content and then the political realities. But I think the opportunities in my short period of time here, I think, are in looking at some very specific graduate programs that we could, and I think it can be done.
Well, it was good to hear you talk about the resources, because that first graduate program is going to cost us a lot of money.
Yeah.
Library and just a change of philosophy, we're basically teaching.
Yeah.
And then to try to redirect it into a research.
Well, I think you can have, and here again, now you asked me a question, and I'm not going to just agree with you.
No, please.
I think there's a difference between a research graduate program and a type of graduate program I'm thinking about, for example. You could have a very strong, I don't know whether they work here, you could have a very strong master's degree program for working adults in health administration and health management. That's not a research program. And one would not expect faculty in that area to do research. I would expect them to stay abreast of their discipline like I expect all of us to do. But that's long-winded. I hope I address it. Yeah. Yes?
Kevin Dupre from English.
Yes.
How do you work to support faculty morale in general and perhaps help improve trust and morale in the environment that has undergone some, well, there's a lot of distrust and
Yeah.
poor morale under the previous academic.
Well, from what I've read, I think there are a lot of things we can do together we need some successes. And I think there are things, opportunities and successes of the faculty, working with goals and working with the input. And you know, one of the most overused words, but it's a good word, is transparency, is openness. We need to take a look at not only what a degree program, but we need to be honest with each other as what are the costs. We all don't know that. And I remember my chief financial officer entire time I was president, and I just had lunch with her last week. She's retired. She has a PhD in organic chemistry. And somebody said, but she's not an accountant. And I said, I don't care. I want somebody who thinks. I want somebody who can take a look at the big picture and explain it to me. She can hire an accountant. And so we worked, I wouldn't advise that for a lot of people. She and I work together very, very closely. But there needs to be that open dialogue. It's not that I don't care, because I am interested. If I were to come as interim president, it would be for a specific period of time. And I think one of my jobs is to work with you as we work through this and say, okay, when we look for a permanent, what are we looking for? What are the attributes? And you need to be part of that discussion. But that we need to be open. I respect faculty responsibilities and dialogue, and that's not just a catchword, because I'm not here talking about a career, my full-time job, or anything like that. I'm here because I'm interested, and I think I can help. But check me out if you want to call some people on that, really. But sometimes we'll disagree. And I hope that you would feel comfortable enough, free enough to say, I do not agree with this direction, but I hope that in the case that I'm trying to understand your point of view, that I'm articulate enough that I can be able, not in a glib way, but in a very straightforward way, describe why I'm moving in a certain direction. And I've always, not every time, but that's always just been an effective way of working with folks. Yeah.
What is your long-term psychology? What is your philosophy about traditional education versus distance learning?
Yes. I'm from a generation that, and I don't read ebooks. But that's just my generation. I got a hold of a book. Rarely do I read a newspaper online except when I'm traveling. I like to feel it, So I'm not, but distance education is with us. It's very important. There's some disciplines that I find it hard to see how we could do it and do an effective job of teaching and learning. I always felt, and I don't know whether it's possible here, but I always felt in the old word, I don't know what it is now, the blended, so that, a lot of the content can be delivered online, but at some point we need that mentoring that most of us in this room have faced throughout our careers as students. Well, I want to be able to talk to other students and to the faculty member eye to eye. And another thing that lay people have a hard time understanding, and this was a tough sell or discussion with some of my board members when I was president, because some of the business people, their view of online distance education was money-making. Distance online courses are hard, I think, to teach. I mean, if you want me to make money, fill this place up with a bunch of, well, let me give my example. Fill this place up with a bunch of freshman students and let me offer instruction, I did not say teach, offer instruction in psychology. I'm not teaching, but I'll make money. But that's, and distance learning sometimes will make money, but I like it, I like to blend the two. But there are some disciplines, I know at one time, and I think it's still vibrant, the University of South Carolina, I was not part of it, but I was a colleague, they developed a really, really robust distance learning master's degree in librarianship. Well, the faculty had discovered, not discovered, but they had looked at ways that type of teaching and learning was effective. So I'm a supporter of it. I put my toe in the waters very carefully, and quite frankly, some of you in this room know a lot more about it than I do, and it would be presumptuous of me to tell you how to do it, because I would not be the one. But I know that was when we were hiring all the young faculty at Young Harris College. They felt much more comfortable than those of us who had been in higher education for a long while. But it wasn't a conflict, but they just felt more at ease with it. But that's fine. And if they can do it effectively, and if we have the resources, but bottom line is, don't do it because you think it's going to make money, because it can, but it's not education as I know.
That's what's remarkable about this school, is not having the freshmen and the
Yeah.
sophomore. We don't have the cash cows.
Yeah.
That the other universities.
Yeah.
And yet, you've been very, very.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's, but you're providing, from what I see, an educational opportunity for a great bunch of people who, if you weren't here, what would they do? And so I just think what you're doing is something really significant. And I don't have to say these things because I'm looking for a full-time job. I'm just giving you observations, and some of them may be inaccurate, but I don't know that until I'm here a while. Oh, by the way, the first graduate paper I wrote at Ohio State, and thank goodness the let me get away with it. I made an A. I did a paper, it was an abnormal psychology class, and I did a paper, and this was easy, I did a paper on abnormal psychology in the works of Flannery O'Connor. Well, that was a slam dunk, you know. You could just read one novel and take care of that. But he thought it was great.
I pass you in the hallway, would you say hello?
Yep. And if I don't, call me on it. You know, sometimes, you know, we go off and thinking of something, and it's not going to offend me to say, Ron, I just said hi. And that's not going to hurt my feelings. I'm going to be embarrassed a little bit, maybe. Maybe not a lot, but, you know, I wish I would have said hi. Yes, sir.
Sam Corey, College of Business. We're working on some graduate programs, and one of them goes up for final decision in about 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks, on December 5th. If we're not successful with that one, do you suggest that we continue with other ones, or should we go back and revisit our strategies and decide whether or not we want to do any graduate program? We've got plans to, right now we have plans to, 2 other ones if we're not successful with this one.
Well, let's don't say if we're not successful. Let's don't build victory on defeat.
No, we didn't go.
I'd rather say, look how well we've done with this one, so hey, why don't we add the other 2? But no, I don't think that you should, you know, run the white flag up. But I think that we need to know the reasons the program was turned down, and if those reasons are valid, and it could be. Is it a program thing? Then let's look at what is it that, is it a resource? And others look at the resource and say, yeah, this looks great, but you don't have the money to do it. So we should have thought of that before.
It's the other schools that are fighting us.
And the other thing is, that this is a real work. And we know that if we develop a program, every other school in the state, public institution, is going to say we're duplicating what they're doing, whether we do it or not. That's just
Yeah, that's
the
the
way.
fight.
And then we look, if it's a political thing,
Yeah.
and we've got a good program, then that's another issue that we need to deal with it on some face-to-face stuff with our colleagues. But no, I don't think just because, I know you weren't implying this, but I'd rather build a program that's solid academically, that's solid resource-wise, so they can't get us on those things, that we can handle politically. And I don't mean elected politics, I mean academic politics and elected politics. But those are different battles. Sometimes that once again, those of us in the academy feel like they're dirtying our hands, and yeah, they are, but we want the program through, not at all costs, but that's it. But yeah, I do think, but when we look at programs, let's look at those programs, the graduate programs, and let's do some preliminary work. Let's don't jump, and I'm not implying that you've done this, let's don't jump head first in how many hours of this and how many hours of that. Let's look at the back end of it and say, what is it that we want these graduates to know, and what is it we want these graduates to do? And then let's backfill it from there. And I think we can make strong cases over there.
I think the problem, though, is that the four-year institutions for graduate programs, they would smell a rat. They would say, they're just trying to get that in so that they can become a member of our club. And once we're in that club, then we're going to try to expand. Rick Mole may be able to address.
He can handle it.
Yeah, you can, I mean, but that's the political side.
Yeah, I know, and I've dealt with that so often, and it does get really tough, as you know, at the graduate level. That's where the turf battles really come into play. I mean, if a school in South Carolina, if say Coastal Carolina wanted to offer a major in pick a field, and we probably wouldn't have gotten any opposition. But boy, when we started looking at graduate programs and recently a doctoral program, which was approved, that's when the knives come out, and the knives are pretty sharp. But if you've got a, and that's where you need advocates. Faculty are good at what we do, but at that point, and it's rough to say this, but this happened to me. Look, this is not new. This stuff happened in medieval times, but in the academy. But they did kill each other. But let's not go that far. But that when we get into at those levels and those kinds of, we as a faculty are usually not good at that, and we've got to have trust in the leadership to understand our point of view and carry the banner for us and being effective. And I would view myself as part of that leadership team. And view and I don't know in a short period of time, but hopefully your permanent provost will do this, that I would have, or the provost would have a good enough relationship with the academic leaders of surrounding institutions, like UNA, like Alabama Huntsville, like those, go over and say, okay, here's what we want to do. And I'm just up front with you and just have a conversation. Now, I knew the former leadership at UNA, Dr. Ponce, who was a good friend of mine. I knew the former leadership at Huntsville, Frank Franz, who's a good friend of mine. But they like I are has-been, so wouldn't do a lot of good talking to Frank unless he wanted to talk physics, which I could not enter in that conversation. But, yeah, I wish the world were not that way, but it is.
We also have the private institutions, that they can do almost anything they want to.
Yeah, yeah, that's true, that's true. And I come from a state, now I'm a product of a private institution, and I'm very committed to private institutions. But I come from a state where the privates were not strong enough to mount that sort of force. So I'd have to be honest with you, that would be an arena that I have very limited. I've been in an arena where I had opposition from Clemson and University of South Carolina and Francis Marion and Lander and so forth, but not with the privates. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your understanding of shared governance, how you perceive that to be, whether or not you perceive it to be an effective way to manage in a university setting?
Well, you're in business, so, you know, how often do we hear that term, you ought to operate this institution like a business? Well, God forbid. We're not a business. Now, there are business functions at an institution that should be held, but we are not a business with top-down operational structures. And that's what's confusing to many people who come from the business world. And I keep using the word because it's a word I feel very comfortable with. We are the academy. We are a safe haven, if you will, where ideas are tossed around and back and forth. And ideas bubble up. Now sometimes, and hopefully more times than it used to be, ideas not come as dictates, but as comes to the faculty as ideas, what ifs. What if we did this? I used to, when I was provost, and doing my walk-arounds and stuff, and finally a trusted faculty colleague of mine told me when I became president, said, Ron, said, you know, when you were provost, you used to love to go, what if we did this? Because I love to stir up things like that. What if we did this? And what if we did that? She said, as president, we as faculty knew what you meant when you said, what if? Because you meant, let's talk about this. But as president, people interpret your what ifs as we're going to do it. So you need to temper the what ifs as president. You can do it as provost a little bit, but not as president. So I feel I was at the University of South Carolina, I was the elected faculty representative to the Board of Trustees. I didn't vote, but that's okay, that was all right. I sat at the table, I had one of these nice little brass nameplates up in front of me. But I had, and when the board, they expected my input from a faculty perspective. And I felt, and thank goodness most of the board felt, that was valuable to them. And so I'm strongly committed to faculty governance. I've always operated in a system, and this is new when I went to Young Harris, because this was new to me, and I'm not sure all the intricacies of your faculty governance system. But the faculty at Young Harris, because they were so small, but they were getting larger, and they met as a committee of the whole. The faculty senate consisted of all the faculty. So you had to wait till the faculty meeting every year to get anything done. So administration a lot of times had to overstep what I think were bounds to do things because they couldn't wait for an annual meeting. So we implemented a faculty senate, and it wasn't easy because this department says, well, why? It's kind of like federal government, you know, the Senate and the House. Well, it's that department. They only have 3 faculty members. Why do they get a vote? And we've got 10, and we get 1 vote. So it's called the Senate. It's not called the Faculty House of Representatives. So faculty governance there needs to be a structure, there needs to be active committees. The faculty committees need to discuss the items, present issues, present solutions, hopefully, to the faculty senate, which should spend most of its time not getting into, there ought to be enough trust. They should need to ask questions, but the committees need, that's where the hard work needs to be done. And then it comes to the faculty senate. And my view was, I don't know what my practice was, I did not attend faculty senate meetings as provost unless asked to attend, or unless I went to the head of the faculty senate and asked if I could come and tell what the specific item was. Or if the head of faculty senate wanted me just to come with not a specific agenda item, but just an open mic, sort of thing. But I just didn't drop by the faculty senate. So that's a little bit about the faculty governance. Some of the faculty governance things, principles are a bit outdated, but you know, not too many years ago, we just didn't wear robes at graduation. We wore them to class and all that. So we've come a little way, but not a whole lot. But I don't know. I was just thinking. I don't know what made me think of this, but I don't think the AAUP statement on academic freedom has been revised since maybe the 47 version, or maybe in the 50s, the 60 something. Well, I started thinking about academic freedom, and I know Bill Friday, who was a revered chancellor of the University of North Carolina system. I was in a conversation with him one time, and I was a young faculty member, and you know, he was a strong, just a pillar during the McCarthy years, which most of you here might have read about, but where faculty were coming under attack by Joe McCarthy, and North Carolina, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill was especially coming under attack. And I remember Bill Friday said, you don't need academic freedom until you need it. In other words, most of the time, it's not an issue, or the issues are sort of trivial, but sometimes there are major issues where you need it. And he was right about that. But in today's climate of blogs, the internet, all that stuff, where is what I would consider pure, if there is, pure academic freedom, as we talked about in the 60s, and the principles of academic freedom, how much of that still works in today's internet environment? Just because I have strong views in my field of psychology, which I feel free in speaking out on, whether in the classroom or not. A reporter asked my opinion, which is psychological in nature. I'm speaking as a guy who has some knowledge in that. And so I ought to feel free to express my opinion. Do I have the freedom to, on a blog, make a personal attack on someone else, be it a colleague or someone? That might be illegal. I don't know whether it is or not, but I don't think it has anything to do with academic freedom. So all this is we need to think of all these things in terms of today. And I hope I'm making a progress, but most of my grounding is in some things I don't understand, other things today. Yeah.
When the university you were with, when you seceded from the South Carolina system, then you had a separate board of trustees.
Yeah.
Was there an issue that the board of trustees office of the president?
No, because I was fortunate. I had a board of, I didn't have a board of trustees. Oh, I had a board of trustees as the chancellor of a system. They were up in Columbia. They didn't even come to my campus, which was wonderful. But, you know, so they didn't interfere in my life, but neither did they help my life, or the life of the campus. But then, after this bill passed, the next day I had a board of trustees. Now, I was fortunate on having some influence. We select boards of trustees quite a bit differently than you do in Alabama. But I had, because the board of trustees in South Carolina are elected by the General Assembly, most of them. So they have to go to Columbia and stand in the lobby and ask a 26-year-old accountant from somewhere to vote for me. And you can't get, a lot of times, strong people when they might send one of their representatives up to do it. But I was fortunate enough to influence some of the members of the board. Several had been, like one of the members of my board had been chairman of the board of Davidson College. So when you have people like that who had experience, it was a lot easier. The other thing is, I was elected president twice. Because in the first board meeting, one of the board members got up and made a motion to name me president. And somebody said, no, we need to search. Well, they'd never done a search at a brand new institution. I wasn't going to hold my career on hold for a year while they searched for somebody. So anyway, he made a motion that I be named president. And somebody said, you mean interim president? He said, no, president. And then there was some discussion about that, as you can imagine. So they said, okay, Ron's going to be named president, and then what we're going to do is hold some, what we now call focus groups, go around campus, organize meetings with faculty and other groups to see if we needed to have an interim or a national search or whatever. So they did that, and very humbled by the fact that the only opposition, because the faculty needed, and the campus needed stability, and they knew that. And the only kind of opposition one I had there was a faculty member in business, and he told me, he said this. I mean, it didn't matter to me. He said, I told him I was opposed to it because I just felt we needed a search, and I said, I understand that. So they came, the board came back at their next meeting and named me president again. So I've been named twice as president. So I don't think you would. There may be some faculty who have said that the president's a puppet of the board at Coastal Carolina. I apologize. Let me give you an example. Another example. I had a member of the board, he's still on the board, very conservative. I'm not going to use right wing, left wing, but very conservative. A very thoughtful guy. And he and I would probably disagree on everything. We had an issue where a student publication, which was a very good publication, had done a very, very good quarterly publication, and they talked about issues that were real, where students at Coastal Carolina, women at Coastal Carolina University, in order to pay for tuition, were working in strip joints in Myrtle Beach, where members of athletic teams, in order to pay for their schooling, were bouncers at some of these clubs. And they were talking about the seamier life that exists out there, and it was good. It was not salacious. Well, one of the members of the board just went crazy. He was very conservative, even more conservative than the one I'll tell you about in a minute. And he got up and he wanted the faculty advisor to the publication to come and meet with the board. And I said, wait a minute. No. If you've got issues, let's deal with them here, but it is not a faculty member's responsibility. And you ought to have enough trust and the faculty. And if you can point out anything that's wrong here, you maybe wish that it hadn't been written, but it's real. And then said, well, then I make a motion that we withdraw all funding for student publications. Well, this right-wing, no, conservative, other conservative member, he got up, and I thought he was going to support it. And he said, nope. So the faculty, the board is stepping on slippery surface here. That we ought to have enough confidence in the administration that they need to have. Now, we can express to Ron privately, or even publicly, our views on this. But the board, now here's a very conservative guy defending the rights of the institution, and that it would be absurd to withdraw funding from a publication. There are probably some serious accreditation issues on that. But also that this cannot be a star chamber where a board has the authority to call before them members of the faculty whose views with which they may disagree. And the board, to this day, to my knowledge, has been pretty steadfast on that. Now, they let me know when they felt faculty members were speaking out of turn. But
We're at noon, so I know people have other places they need to be.
I'm sorry I rambled on.
No, that's okay, that's okay. You want, Ron, I know you have a question too. Are they brief, or
Yes.
would you want to talk one-on-one, or do you want to go ahead?
I'll be brief.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Joel Goodman, psychology.
Yeah.
As you know, we have a bit of political strife and uncertainty here right now. You would be unfairly walking into some of the backlash of that.
Yeah.
Some of what's left over.
Yeah.
And we would need you to try to heal that. Even though you didn't cause it, of course.
Yeah.
We need some healing.
Yeah.
Between the faculty, provost,
Yeah.
president, board, throughout, but especially between the provost and the faculty.
Yeah.
Do you have any specific ideas or attitudes, thoughts on how you would approach that?
That's probably taken more, that
It
probably
is.
should have occurred at the beginning. I have some thoughts, some ideas. I think it's a little premature. One thing I wish we could do, and you may say, no, it's far too long. I told a group this morning, I'm not denying those wounds are there. I'm by any means denying that. But I don't want to even get into conversations about the former provost. I don't know the gentleman. I don't know why he did certain things. My time is short. I prefer to look at, okay, let's deal with some of these things that need to be dealt with immediately, and others, it'll take us a while. And it may not happen while I'm here, but hopefully that we can build a level of trust and a framework when you do hire a permanent provost, if there is such a thing. You can hire a permanent provost to come in, that at least we're well on the road that that person can come in and work with you on continuing moving ahead in a positive direction.
My question was essentially the same, so you don't have to worry about it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I apologize for wandering. You may have to put up with that. You just have to call me all the time.
Thank you. Y'all have a great afternoon.